So, let's see. Alright, let's see. Alright. Who knows? That's what we're doing, right? Okay, hi everybody. This is Miss Raina, and we're going to start the show pretty soon. As always, for some reason, it always takes a few minutes on the YouTube channel to get going. I have no clue why. So you just gotta look at me, kind of look dumbfounded each time, and just be like, "Oh, okay, it's finally on." So I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. I'm really excited about tonight's show, and as soon as that goes off. But I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. I'm excited because pretty soon I'm gonna be leaving for Chicago. I'm excited to see my family, and I really am. I'm not excited to see the cold though. The cold is is never a good thing. So just let me check, make sure the audio is still working. Okay. All right. And all right, we got everything working. Okay. So also I'm getting the new computer and stuff and for the system and everything coming up in December, so it should be here before Yule, and that's always a good thing, right? Because I get to take the radio show to the next level, so that's going to be really nice. So we're going to have different angles on cameras and all sorts of good stuff, and I'm ex- I'm excited because I want to. I want to be able to run this show smoothly. And I'm going to have a couple computers do a couple different things. One of the computers is going to run live the radio show, the audio only, and the other one's going to be running this live chat with a couple different camera angles, and hopefully it'll be clearer, smoother, better for you guys. And we're just going to see how it goes from there. But I hope you guys have had a good week, like I said, and hopefully you guys have some good plans for this holiday season. Hopefully everybody is getting along as we should be getting along all year long, right? Uh, but um, but if you guys have any special plans or anything that's going on, please write me. Let me know what's going on because I'd love to hear about it. I always love to hear about you guys, seriously. And it's. I love to take part in your guys' life as much as you guys take part in mine because that's what the show is all about, right? So, we got about a minute left. I always hear that. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not, but I have this lady screaming in my ear all the time, telling me every single minute when it's going to be close to countdown. So that's why I'm always pausing if you guys can't hear it. If you guys can hear it, then you know why I'm pausing. but uh, but all right, we got a great show for you guys. Thank you again for joining us, and I guess I'll see you at the end of the show. Got my tea with my little. I love Nightmare Before Christmas. It's one of my favorite movies. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Monday, December 19th, 2016. That's right, I said Monday. We're not on Tuesday tonight, we're on Monday. And as always, we are coming live from the beautiful city of West Palm Beach in Florida. I hope all of you are doing well. If you guys were part of the pre-show and on the YouTube streaming, or the YouTube live stream, then we talked a little bit about the little Christmas holiday and little Yule holiday and all this stuff, what's going on. So hopefully you guys are getting prepared for that. I know it's chaotic this time of year. I know the stores are chaotic, and I know it's a lot of stress around holidays, right? It's supposed to be a time of compassion and understanding and kind of putting the worries aside, but it doesn't it add kind of a little bit more stress to our lives? Because I don't know about you, I don't do presents and gifts. I don't believe in that. To me, my friends and my family, just spending time with them is gift enough. But I know a lot of people do gifts, and I bet you that adds a lot more stress to your daily lives. So hopefully you guys got if you guys have kids, hopefully you guys got everything you wanted to get them, and hopefully Santa will bring them some good treats too, right? Well, this past week, I actually, the reason why we've taken 2 weeks off was because I was in a tournament in Orlando last weekend, and oh my God, we had such a good time. It's a U-Trip tournament as always in Orlando. We play at the Disney Fields and the ESPN Wide World of Sports. I think that's what it's called, if I can ever remember that name correctly. But we did really good this year. We were undefeated through the whole thing, and we were supposed to win the championship. And would you believe it? We on the second day, on the Sunday when we were facing the championship, we got double dipped, and I cannot believe it. We were like on fire this weekend, and I don't know what happened. We just couldn't play. Like, it was one of those days where everything went right for the other teams, and we just couldn't get anything going all of a sudden. And that's why you play the sport, though, right? Because if everybody's guaranteed to win, then there's no reason to play. But I had a lot of fun. You know, I was playing catcher this time and stuff. My hip was bothering me kind of bad, so I really wasn't running well. I had base runners and everything, but my hitting was on fire, and so at least I got to participate in some way. I got to help out the team in some way, because when I'm in the outfield, I feel like I'm really helping the team and I'm really doing my job. But as a catcher, it kind of is like, well, all I'm doing is catching a ball that's being tossed to me. So it kind of makes me feel a little bit like, what am I supposed to do with myself? But it was a really nice time. We had a lot of fun, and I always enjoy Disney. If any of you have ever gone to Disney, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Disney is a great time. It's expensive. I think it's like for like a egg McMuffin sandwich or whatever they call it is like $12, and it's ridiculous. So I always bring my own food up and bring in everything. But it is a good time, and if you've never been to Disney, it's a nice place to go if you have kids or anything like that. But this is going to be the last show of the year. I wanted to make that announcement because obviously I'm going to Chicago, and I really don't feel like bringing all my radio equipment and everything, and I just kind of want to enjoy being with my family without stressing about putting a show together and and everything else. And that doesn't mean I don't love you guys any less, but I think I'd very rarely get to see my family, and I'd really like to spend the holidays with them and just kind of soak up all the goodness of just being with them. So our next show will probably be in about the second week of January, because my birthday is coming up as well, and who knows, sometimes I might get wild and crazy like I used to be, and we'll see. We'll take it from there, but just pay attention to social media, and we'll go from there, from where it's coming out. But as always, we are live on the YouTube stream. I'm looking at it right now, and it's a little bit slower than my live feed, but it looks good, and hopefully everything is working well. And I promise you, when I get the second computer, everything will go smoothly. So if you're listening to the audio and you want to see what the show's like, and you want to see who's behind the mic, feel free to go to youtube.com/Transcendental Transformation Radio Show, all one word, and tune in. Well, if you tuned in last week, our last show, not last week, it was our last show, we had the heart of all champions, and we talked about how expression of self and how that's so important to express ourselves, and how many of us have a hard time doing that. And it seems like such an easy concept to get. Oh, well, let's just speak our mind. Let's just kind of be who we are. And it just seems like that's such a hard concept to do in today's life. And if you kind of notice that today we're going to talk about choices, and the shows kind of roll into each other, and there's a reason for that, and you'll figure it out at the end of the show. But we have a fear that we're going to offend and hurt somebody, and we're not sensitive enough, are we? And and if you act this way or you present yourself this way, then you need to you need to make sure that you don't offend anybody. Kind of like how the holidays is. You see people saying keep Christ in Christmas, and some people don't want to hear Merry Christmas. Some people don't want to hear Merry Yule. Some and it gets crazy. Or Happy Hanukkah. I mean, how dare we say Happy Hanukkah during this time, or Merry Yule, or Merry Christmas? And it gets so ridiculous, doesn't it? And this is not love and compassion, people. We need to learn to soften our hearts, and we need to learn not to fear who we are. We need to be proud of who we are and express ourselves. And we must learn to be open and mindful, to who we are, to what our values are. And I don't mean values as in what's right or wrong or good or bad. What I mean is who we are. What brings us peace? What brings us joy? What brings us into balance and harmony? And that's what I mean by being open and mindful. Express who you are. Express your thoughts. Express your feelings. And you're going to find that that your life is just going to go a lot smoother. When you use your heart and that passion inside of it, that fuel, that it gives you power. And if you're not familiar with using it, oh man, this show and last week's show is really going to teach you kind of show you what the heart kind of energy does and the power it brings to you. So that's very important for us to do. So if you missed the show, it's in the archives, and you know where it's at. Go check it out. All right, well, let's start our weekly question, because we're already a little bit behind schedule, as I notice. And I shortened the question a little bit, just kind of to get the gist of everything. But this week's question was, I noticed that many who claim to be awake are angry and constantly push their way on others as common sense. As anybody, I'd like to think that I'm also awake. But how do we know that we're awake without becoming angry or pushing ourselves or being closed-minded? Taylor from Gainesville. Taylor, I absolutely love this question. I really do, because I get asked this all the time as well. This is something that that is troubling our world. And because a lot of us say that we're awake, a lot of us really love to believe that we're awake, and rightfully so, some of us are. Many of us who are awake become angry, and many of us who aren't awake are angry too. And it's kind of like this weird mindset of like, well, if everyone's angry, well, how do we know who's really awake? And if you're awake, then why are you so angry? Well, let's start by looking at something really quickly and saying, well, when we become truly, when we start to grow spiritually, and we start to, expand our awareness, we start to see all the lies and the injustices of the world, and we start to see all the deceit from people, and why they're lying to me, and why can't this be simple? Why, if this is truly of love and compassion, then why does this have to go X, Y, and Z? And if we're truly a free country, or really a free world, then why do we have so many laws to block us to do this and this? And it's even with the self-expression of last week. If we're truly awake, then why can't we express ourselves? And when you see the injustice in the world, the first reaction is always because we are conditioned to see everything as pain and anger. And so our first response to a lot of things is pain and anger, because we associate ourselves with what we see. So in other words, what ends up happening is we sit there and we'll say, okay, well, I've felt like that. I've been wronged before by somebody. Somebody's lied to me. Somebody's hurt me. Somebody's betrayed me. And so when I start seeing that in the world, I associate my past and my unresolved issues with the current situation. And when we see that in the current situation, what ends up happening is pain and anger because we don't know how to deal with it. And so our way of going out there and trying to make this world a better place, as we're going to say, and that, or a more lightful place, is by going out there and shoving our ways down everyone's throat. And honestly, that's not the way we need to do things. And you may be waking up to something, and yes, you are going to go through those periods of anger and confusion and sadness and grief, and that because depression and grief is just the other side of becoming awake to it first. But when you look at things and you say, well, what has to change? And really, it's us that has to change. We can sit there and complain on social media and tell everybody, what the truth is or what we think the truth is, because a lot of people think that they're saying the truth, but they're very close-minded to a lot of ideas. But, truly awake people see things with love and compassion. They don't fight with anger. They don't fight with the need to be right, and they don't definitely fight with their ego. When we're shoving our ideas down somebody else's throat or the world, and it's becoming angry because they don't have common sense, because they don't believe what I believe or they don't see what I see, that's ego, and that's the need to be right. And when we use words like, oh, people are stupid, people are idiots, or, oh, come on, this is such common sense, why don't you get that? Everyone's dumb in the world. Because I hear that all the time, even from students of mine. And when they first start the program, you got to look at yourself and you got to change that. You got to be able to walk away from that. Hey, there's things that, kind of upset me, even though I understand what's going on in the world. But I don't get involved in it because I understand that the world has to be a certain way in order for it to work. And so therefore, we don't pick sides. We're not going to pick a side. Or we don't believe that my side's always right. We're open-minded to the possibilities of change. So, like I always say, i.e. politics. Politics is something that we're always involved in, right? And especially recently, because we just had the election. And a lot of people say, a lot of people pick one side, and they see the hatred and disdain and the evil on one side, but they are completely blind to it on the other side. Well, that's not an awake person. That's someone who's fooling themselves. They may still have a good heart. They still may have, want what's best for the world. They want the world to grow. But as long as they choose to see only one side or the other and involve in their anger, they're not doing the world any favors. They're not helping the world grow in consciousness. And this is why I always tell people, the first thing you must learn to do is listen and think. Before you react to something, before you go out, balls to the walls and just kind of rant and rave all over social media and call people stupid and everything, and just become engrossed in your anger. Listen to people, listen to your ideas, listen to what you think, listen to your emotions, and think about this. Listen to what others have to say and work with others to find solutions. Because I tell you what, people, nobody is listening to you. If they don't agree with you, they don't care what you have to say. And so if you're ranting and raving in anger, all that reinforces to them is that you're angry, and that's why they're not on that side. So this is very important, and I want to thank you, Taylor, because this is such an important question, and that's the reason why I picked it, was because this is a true question that's really going on in the world. And a lot of people use the word awake. A lot of people say that they're awake to the consciousness, and they're in the right and they're in the wrong, and the other people are in the wrong, and this is common sense. And really what we don't realize is we're that very anger and hate and closed-mindedness as the people we think that are. So that's it. But let's get into tonight's show, because I am way behind schedule, and I have so much information for you guys that I want to make sure that I get into it. But tonight is all about our choices and the consequences that may follow. Do you struggle? Maybe you're one that struggles with making difficult decisions in your life and fear that you will make the wrong choice. Or maybe you make the choices that are dependent on other people's thoughts and feelings, or the ramifications of others. let's face it, people. Life is really tough. It is, and anybody that says life is easy obviously doesn't live in the real world. Maybe they live up on a mountain or something, but in the first world and a lot of all over the world, I don't know, I mean, there's first world problems, second world problems, and third world problems, and they're all different. But we all deem life to be tough, and to all of us, our challenges are important, and they seem like the toughest challenges ever, even in comparison to others. But if you look at it, every day we make choices in life. We do. Every second of every day, from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed and then we start it all over, we're making choices. And many of them are always different. I mean, we have some repetitious choices. I mean, as simple as like, what are we going to eat today, and if we're going to adhere to our schedules and everything. But depending on how we feel and how we look, and what's going on in our emotional and mental state is depending on what kind of choice we're going to make, and our choices always depend on the outcome. And when you look at that, when I say that, what I mean by that is our minds are already thinking, well, if I make this choice, what is going to be the outcome? In a world of fear, what ends up happening is we call the word outcome consequences. And consequences is to me a very limiting word, because if we say, well, if we say, oh, well, I got to make the right choices, or these are going to be the consequences, well, then that kind of already puts me in a stressor. That already puts me in panic mode. And someone who deals with anxiety and agoraphobia and stuff like that, if that's my mental thought, is that, oh, well, I got to make the right choice, otherwise I'm going to have consequences, then that's already going to bring fear into my world. That's already going to bring chaos to my world. And I got to tell you, as a child, I was always taught that. And as a child, we're always taught that. You got to, I mean, if you watch anything like Nickelodeon or Disney Channel or any kids show, they tell you got to make the right choice, or don't make the wrong choice. You got to make the positive choice. We're constantly conditioned to this idea. Otherwise, there's going to be ramifications. There's either going to be some evil god hanging from above, ready to strike you down and send you to a fiery place, or karma's out to get you, and man, it's going to get you, and it's just going to liven you up, and I mean, no wonder why no one wants to make a choice. If this is the thought process that's going on in today's world, man, I gotta feel, I feel bad for anybody that lives their life like this. When you're afraid to make the wrong choice, you're always going to create a negative, in that sense, a negative consequence. And I don't believe in such things as positive and negative, or better, worse, good, bad, and stuff. But I'm using my no words just to kind of help everyone understand what their thought process is. But if your mindset says, well, if I make a wrong choice and I'm going to get a negative consequence, then what we're not understanding is we're not understanding the lessons that be. We're not understanding what that situation came into our life for. We allow fear to dictate our actions. And if as long as fear, which runs your life, you're always going to find some sort of chaotic situation in your life. Once the fear dictates your actions, then it's going to impair your judgment. You're going to hesitate to think about what it is I want to make my choice on. And oftentimes we're going to make, if we're already in a mindset of right and wrong and good or bad, you're already going to pick the wrong choice, because it allows you to say, see, I told you so. And that's why for some people, they don't make a choice at all. We'll be right back after these messages. I want to know how many of us don't make choices at all. How many of us have a hard time making a decision in life. For many of us, the fear of making the wrong decision hinders us crazy. It stops us in our tracks from in our mind moving forward or doing anything in our life. I've actually had quite a few friends, and I always call them after I seen was it Finding Nemo and the dad calling Dory a delay fish. That's as a joke. That's what I call my friends sometimes that hesitate or don't make decisions. I'm like, okay, come on, delay fish, because it's sitting there and they're so afraid to make a choice because in their mind, well, it's better to take no action than the wrong action. And this type of thinking is really critical to our growth. This type of thinking will stop us from growing in any form, any social form or any personal form whatsoever. Because what's going to happen is you're going to always have fear that's going to allow you to dictate yourself into any direction. And most often, for those of you that don't make decisions, into no action at all. And so what's ended up happening is you're going to sit there and have where you're going to feel like your life is stuck, where you're going to feel where life has not like you don't move forward. So it was one of my mottos, and actually I say this at the end of all the shows all the time, is it's our choices that define us. And so if it is our choices that define us, and our choices are based on right or wrong, good or bad, or what the outcomes are or what the consequence is, then how do we know what the right choice is, and how do we know that it's going to benefit us and bring us into the correct direction? Well, let's start off by saying all choices benefit us. All of them do. All choices absolutely benefit us. I don't care what kind of mindset you have, what kind of thought process you have. I don't care what is going on in your mind and your heart, and I will tell you that all choices benefit us. Everything we do is for growth or personal development. Every choice that you make, every step that you go, even in an idea of standing still, even in an idea of making the wrong choice, you're always gaining knowledge. Every second of every day, life is here to teach you, and this is why I make it so clear about my no words, is because when we take away our no words and we take away the idea of a choice being good or bad, right or wrong, positive or negative, we allow the lessons to come in. We allow us to understand that we're growing. We allow us to see the growth in us, and we allow us to gain the knowledge. And that's so very important. Is to shift perception, because even those that aren't, that say, well, I'm not going to make a choice, I'm just going to sit here and I'm not going to learn anything, are actually still learning. They're still learning that by making no choice, our life is not going to go in the direction that we want, or we're not going to see the production that we want to see. They're still gaining the knowledge. It may be at a slower pace. It may be for people that are always in the wrong direction or always in the wrong choices. It may be a little bit more chaotic, but every choice that you make, once you make a decision, you've already shifted your direction into a section of a path that's going to bring you some sort of knowledge, that's going to bring you some sort of lesson, that's going to bring you some sort of idea so that you can learn about yourself. Even those, like I said, that feel stuck, even those that say, oh, well, I'm stuck, I've made these decisions before, and I mean, how many of them are out there that sit there and say, oh, well, I've made this decision before and it's always had the negative consequences, or every choice I make just is a negative consequence. And what you're not understanding is you're stopping yourself from learning by allowing your emotions to run rampant, by allowing you to sit there and look at something as good, bad, positive, negative, backwards, forwards, is you're stopping yourself from personal growth. And this is something that we absolutely have to shift in ourselves. We have to be able to change our direction. We have to be able to change our mindset and say, well, let's just make a choice. Let's just, because the only way we make a choice, or the only way we learn, is by doing and experiencing. So if you're not going to make a choice and you're just going to sit there and you're just going to be envious of the world and be jealous or grow in anger because the world's passing you by, well, then, that's part of the lesson is too, is because even though you seem like you're not doing something, you're still doing something. You're doing and you're experiencing. You're understanding that by not making this choice, that life is going to keep moving forward. And then you're going to have regret. You're going to sit there and you're going to say, well, I wish I would have done this. I could have done this. And I got to tell you something. When I was younger, I used to hear all the time people constantly say, oh, I wish I could have done this. I should have done this. I would have done this if. And you know what? I got to be honest with you. I used to sit there and look at them and say, why? Like, why do so many people say would have, could have, should? Well, I was too afraid to make a choice. I was too afraid to do it for fear of what others were going to think of me. If I would have just done this, I wish my life would have, my life could have turned out so differently. And I remember at such a young age, I think I was like 6, 7 years old, I made a vow. I said, I am never going to be one of these people that doesn't make choices, that sits there and would have, could have, should have. Because it seemed to me that everybody who was in would have, could have, should have had anger, they had regret, and they had all these chaotic ideas behind them. And there was some sadness to them because they felt like life has forgotten about them. Life has passed them by. And then people constantly taught me, especially my father, because we were in business, would sit there and say, well, you got to go out there and do this. You got to go out there and make it of your own. You got to, be a little aggressive and really reach for the stars and do what you want. And I thought to myself, well, there's something to this. Because success, if I look at success throughout my life, well, what is success? Well, success comes from someone making a choice, someone doing something, and someone experiencing something. So how could we gain success, and success in any form? I'm not just talking about business. I'm talking in personal life, romantic life, whatever. But, a choice has to be made. And if I choose that I don't want to date somebody, well, guess what? I'm not going to date someone. If I choose that I want to, then I'm going to at least make the effort. You can't make a choice and say, okay, well, I'm going to go find, I'm going to go, make an empire of a business and then just sit on your couch and expect it to happen. It doesn't do that. And so I can't sit there and say, oh, well, I made the wrong choice because my business isn't doing anything, or because, I'm going to go finally open myself up and then I'm closed down to everything. That's not making a true choice. A true choice is saying, I'm going to do this and then I'm following through. Remember, it has to be a choice, then an action or doing, then the experience happens. And so if you're feeling stuck, you got to ask yourself, well, am I really making an honest choice? Am I really making the choice that is in my heart? And that's the other thing that we have to look at, because we can't have success without choice. And we really have to examine what it is that our hearts feel. We had a whole conversation last show about our hearts, the hearts of all champions. So what does our heart really want? Why are we so afraid to make the choices? Why are we so afraid to take that step? What is it inside of us that's stopping us from making a decision and creating the life that we always want? That's what always ends up happening. So let's ask ourselves something. Let's ask ourselves this. If we lived in a world of right and wrong, okay, what's the worst that can happen? What's the absolutely worst that could happen in a world of right and wrong? Well, let's break it down. If I understand that not everyone's going to agree with me, and everything in the world comes to an end, jobs, relationship, friendships, and out of those ends becomes new cycles. Well, then how what's so bad about that? What I mean, of course when I make a statement, I mean I do a radio show and not everyone agrees with me, and that's okay. My point is not to get you to agree, but just to listen and to think about you and try to understand yourself. So okay, that's, hey, I made a choice to do the show, and okay, I understand that. Well, everything comes to an end eventually, no matter what job I have, no matter who I'm with, no matter even this life is going to come to an end. Okay, so I what's the fear in that? What's if I lose a job? Okay, I find a new one. If I lose a friend or my friends transition, I move someplace, I make new ones. Hey, I traveled all over this place by myself without somebody, and I made friends all over the place. So okay, so I go out some more. I make the effort. Yeah, and if and same with relationships. Relationships came and go too. So I mean, I just don't get it. But the thing that stops you is the pain, doesn't it? In a world of right and wrong, there's always pain. There's always suffering. And honestly, if I look at it as if I remove the words right and wrong, if I remove the words consequence, if I remove the words good and bad, and positive and negative, and backwards and forwards, and better and worse, and all my little no words, if I remove those, there's no more pain. Is there? How can there be pain if the choice that I make, if I make to go into business, and if I do the radio show, and and I do it for 5 years, and I decide that it's going to end, I didn't make a right or wrong decision. I didn't make a good or bad decision. It just is what it is. If I decide to date someone, and he or she is not someone that is fitted for me, then I learn about myself. I enjoyed the experience, or maybe not so enjoyed the experience, but I move on and I go forward. So I don't understand where it is. But as long as you live in that world of right or wrong, good or bad, positive or negative, you will always find pain. You will always find discomfort. If you're worried about making the wrong choice, like I said, you will always find some sort of chaotic situation that pulls through it. And why do I say that over and over? Because your life has been chaotic for some of us, hasn't it? That's the reason why we're listening to tonight's show for some of us, is because we understand that, hey, I guarantee you there are many of us who are listening to this show that are always saying, well, I always make the wrong choices. I always make the wrong decision. Everything I do comes and bites me in the butt. Everything I do just falls apart. And that's the pain and suffering. That's the chaos that I'm talking about. That's always in your life as long as you choose to see things with a right or wrong, good or bad, positive and negative outlook. It will always be that way because it prevents you from understanding. It prevents you from seeing things for what it is. It prevents you from learning. And what it ends up doing is it creates the fear. And that big old fear monster that's hovering you all the time, that's constantly on you, that's talking on your shoulder all the time. Hey, you're going to do this. Hey, that you're going to do that. This is going to happen to you if you do this. Is always there, and it's going and it's going to stop you. My phone's going off for some reason, and so fear. When you have fear, when you have pain, when you have suffering due to judgment is one of the things that creates this, one of the things that stops you from choosing. Judgment of yourself, judgment of the idea, and judgment for whatever the situation is or the experience was. And that is you won't be able to see the growth. You will not be able to understand the lessons that is. Why? Because honestly, you're self-absorbed into yourself. You're self-absorbed into your emotions. You're so concerned about you feeling bad or making the wrong choice or victimizing yourself. Or how about the pity party? How many of us hold the pity party all the time? Right? How many of us say, oh, well, like I just said 5 times, well, I always make the wrong decision. I always, if I do this, this is not going to work in my favor. But you don't realize that that's your emotions, and the pity party has made you so self-absorbed that you're going to make yourself stuck. You're not going to allow yourself, due to the judgment of the way you look at yourself. Our fear of choice is 100% a self-esteem issue, and a major one at that. When you victimize yourself, because that's what it is. That's what the pity party is. When you victimize and you play it well, don't you? You sit there and you play that victim very well because you want to feel sorry for yourself. You want to say, "See, that's why, that's why it's not going my way. That's why it's not going that victim inside you, that self-esteem that just is demolished." And so I want to look at it and say, "Well, where did that come from? Where did your self-esteem issues come from? Where did this victim become born? Where in the world did this end up happening? Because it had to come someplace. It had to have been someplace in life where something has happened in your experiences that maybe you maybe made a choice, or maybe someone else made it for you, and you had such a chaotic experience that you decide to victimize yourself and say, you know what, you're not trustworthy. You're not good enough to understand, or to make these decisions. You better leave it up to somebody else." And I'm going to tell you that these people have hardcore attachments. If you are one that has a difficulty making decisions or being stuck in your life, I guarantee you have attachments to things. You hold on to things. Everything is of value, and to get rid of something is always a big deal, or a little bit hard for you to let go. And I've seen it. I've seen people like this. And you also overextend yourself because of your attachments, because these type of things, such as like a cell phone, or or whatever it is, my glasses or the radio show, whatever it is, because these type of things give you value, because I'm not out there making the choices, I'm not doing what's in my heart in order for me to build my self-esteem, in order for me to go on with my life. I have those attachments, and because of that, I have to overextend myself to people because I really want them to like me. I really want people to like me, because if I get people to like me, then my life is moving. The choices that I'm making are good and they're positive, and all these good stuff is happening to me. And you give way too much. You're one of those that probably gives so much to yourself till you're exhausted, and you don't get it in as much as return, and you're probably salty about that. And I'm saying that I'm sure there's different degrees to all of you and stuff, but so take that into consideration. But for the most part, people who can't make choices are often like this. And the other thing that I also notice about people that have difficulty in choices is they're depressed a lot. As I said earlier, sadness and grief come in, and that's a tricky situation. We'll be right back after a message from the Life of Raina. There is never, ever any need to ever envy anybody else. There's never a need to feel stuck, people. If you're feeling stuck, if you're holding on to these attachments, if you have sadness and grief to you, if you overextend yourself, then stop. Take a step back, push back, and say, you know what? I need to look at myself first, and the first choice that I need to make is me. What is it I want? What is it that makes me happy? Forget what anyone else thinks. Forget what anyone else is going to think about me or feel about me. What is it that I want? And that's the very first choice that you must make. Because envy, sadness, grief, all these things, attachments, are letting you know that you're not doing what's in your heart. You're not doing these things because you're afraid of what the outcome or the consequences is. So walk away from making the good or right choice or the bad or consequence. Walk away from those ideas and just make choices. Just say, hey, whatever choice I make, it's going to help me. Whatever choice I choose, whatever direction I take my next footstep in is going to allow me to grow and allow me to learn. Because the only person that you should be envious of is you. You should look at yourself and say, wow, I'm really worth it. I'm so proud of myself, and no matter what happens, whether I'm deemed successful by society or not, or if I have a ton of friends or just one or even just by myself, I'm going to make the choice that I'm going to do that's going to benefit my life and help me grow into a powerful, conscious being. And that's the first thing that we need to do. So let's change. Let's change the idea a little bit, because I want to. What I'm about to talk about is a little difficult for some. And I really want you to think about what I'm going to say before you instantly reject this idea, because I know there's going to be some of you out there that do. But before you instantly reject this idea, I want you just to sit and think about this. What if I told you that 95% of your life was already pre-planned out? What if I said that most of your choices that you've already made or that you're going to make were already predestined choices? Even when you think about making a choice, even when you think about making the choice that's about to become, the choice ends up making is already decided. That the choice that you've just made is going to be predestined. Is that hard for you? How do you feel about that? What's your instant reaction? Do some of you instantly agree with that? Do some of you instantly reject it? Do some of you just say, okay, yeah, that makes sense, or that? I gotta tell you, out of all the things that I teach my students and have for over the long periods of times all over this country, I gotta tell you, this is one of the most difficult and the longest accepting ideas that we must come into agreement with, because this is absolutely true. This is 100% absolutely true, and by far, like I said, the most difficult to accept. Why is it so difficult to accept? Because we're always taught throughout our lives that we have freedom of choice, right? We're free beings. We are allowed freedom. We have freedom of choice to do what we want. We also have freedom of self-expression. So if we have no freedom of choice, if everything's predestined, then what control do we really have? What is it that we have control over? And that is the $1 million question, isn't it? Because what do we have control over? What do we have choice over? Well, I'm going to tell you that in the beginning, when a lesson first starts, when a lesson or an idea or a situation, let's just call them lessons. When anything first starts, it's already predetermined. You have created this on the other side in your blueprint to already have this situation come about. Have any of you guys have you ever just sat there and had a situation come up and you've reacted and you didn't even know why you reacted that way, and you made an instant choice and you're like, what was I thinking? What happened? Like why did I think that? It's because that was a predestined choice. It was already written in your plan and you had no control over it whatsoever. That's why when people go and and do some really, as we deem, some really naughty things in this life, as murder or DUIs or whatever, those are all predestined. When we start a lesson, when we're going to go and let's say we're going to start a relationship, or we're going to go meet somebody, or how many of us have gone out and said, well, what, I wasn't going to go out with my friends, and then they dragged me out, and so I decided to go, and then all of a sudden I met somebody, and then I ended up marrying them, or whatever the situation is because those are all predestined choices. And so you purposely make those choices in order to lead you into a specific direction. And the wonderful thing about that is, and this is why I say there's no such thing as good or bad, positive or negative, right or wrong. That's why when people say, oh, there's sin and all this stuff, no, that there's no such thing, because you have already pre-programmed it. You have already made this choice and you have no control over it. Now, that doesn't mean that we can just live our lives and say, oh, well, I have no control over everything, so you can't blame me. I can't take responsibility for that. Absolutely not. But when a lesson needs to be set up, when an idea or a lesson needs to be set up in order for you to take you down a certain direction or a certain path, in order for you to learn certain lessons, it is always predetermined. And as I said, it's always written in your blueprint. You have to look at it and say, well, you have this blueprint, you have your life, you make up your body, you make up everything about that. So why not our choices? In order for us to understand something, in order for us to go in a direction, then things have to be pre-planned, right? It would make sense. Why when I was in when I was little, why did I know that I was going to live in Florida? Why did I tell people, oh, I'm going to live in Miami, I'm going to live in Florida? And I had no clue what Florida was. This was like 2-3 years old. I would sit there and say that to people. So if things aren't already predestined, if my choices aren't already predestined, and I had this urge ever since I was little to just move, and Florida pulled at me and pulled at me and pulled. And everywhere I went, I just instantly knew. I would wake up and say, I'm moving today. I don't know why. And I would take off. I don't want to be friends with this person anymore. I would take up. I don't need this job anymore. And I would walk out. It would, and something would just come over me. And it was a specific energy that would always come over me whenever something needed to change or whenever something that needed to come in my life. Every time. And that's why I always follow it. And I will tell you, once you get accustomed to following this, and then once you get accustomed to sitting there saying, oh, well, the energy is, you're going to not be afraid of the choices you're going to make. Because a lot of the choices that are coming in are already something to help you, already something to put you on a path to grow. So you're always in the exact place that you need to be. Life makes no mistakes, and let me reiterate that to you. Let me drive that home. Life makes no mistakes, people. It makes absolutely none. You do not make any mistakes at all. Even though we work in a world of mistakes and right and wrong and all that, you cannot mess up. You can't. You cannot mess up, because everything except for a small percentage of things that you actually do in your life is already pre-planned. That's why it is insane to believe that there's sin, that someone's going to punish you for thinking this way or doing it. That's why people are either, and if you're going to look at good or bad, are either born good or born bad, if you want to use those type of ideas. But it's because it's predestined. It's already pre-planned. True choice and true control comes after the lesson is set up. So after it's already laid out, after the groundwork is already laid out and everything's already set up, then is when freedom of choice comes in. So what is freedom of choice? When do we know that it's freedom of choice? When do we know that after the lesson is set up, when do I get to say, you know what, hey, this is my free will now? Well, after you get to determine how long. So after the thing's set up, if you want to determine that you want to be angry all your life, like as if like the question in the beginning of the show, we'll use that. Someone asked me, well, how do we know if we're awake and not? Well, obviously the pre-choices brought us to feel a certain way. It brought us to being open. It brought us to situations to see stuff so we can become awake. But then you choose how long you're going to hold on to that anger, how long you're going to hold on to the pain, and how much chaos you're going to create with it. That's where the freedom of choice comes in. It's not really sitting there saying, well, okay, well, I have a choice, so I made an action and stuff, and now I should be punished for it. No, you made the action because it was pre-chosen. Now, how are you going to deal with it? How are you going to see the growth in it? Are you going to see the lessons in it? Or are you going to see the limitations in it? Are you going to sit there and say, well, I'm not going to make any more decisions in my life. I'm not going to make any more choices because I made this one decision that was pre-planned already, but because it gave me a negative experience, I'm not going to make any more choices for the rest of my life. Well, that part is all you. If you decide that you're never going to make any more choices for the rest of your life because of that, then that part is all you. And that will continue that lesson. I know most of you agree that lessons repeat itself, right? How many times are we going to stick our finger in the light socket until we gain the knowledge? How many times are we going to do that until we say enough is enough? Right? If you put your hand over a fire and burn yourself, you're obviously not going to do it again, right? Unless you have a short-term memory problem and you forget, right? Other than that, you're going to say, well, hey, the lesson is if I put my hand in the fire, it's going to burn, it's going to hurt, and I'm not going to do it again. That is your choice. But why did I put my hand in the fire in the first place? Well, that may be predestined. And when we look at things like that, when we remove positive and negative, right and wrong, when we remove judgment on ourselves and say there's mistakes and we messed up and it's gonna have a negative consequence, and we remove all the garbage, all the limitation, and all that, all we see is understanding and growth. And that's the only thing that we're able to see. The victim inside of us doesn't have air to breathe on. So it can't tell you, well, you're going to make the wrong decision again. This is going to work out bad for us. You better not do that. You are able to use your knowledge, and that's your choice. Are you going to continue to be the victim, or are you going to learn? And this is what's so powerful. And I got to tell you that a lot of my students, when they get through a certain point in the program, they realize that they're like, oh my God, because at first, I got to be honest with you, a lot of them reject that. They're like, Miss Raina, I believe a lot of stuff, but I don't know if I believe that. And that's absolutely sure. But once they start seeing it happening in their life and they start recognizing, oh, I just made that decision and I have no clue why. And then it set them up to learn lessons and then to see how they are going to respond to it. Then all of a sudden they get it and they say, wow, I can gain so much knowledge, and I don't even have to forgive that person anymore. I don't have to forgive that person for treating me like this, because that was meant to be. That was supposed to be like that. I didn't make a stupid decision. It was set up in an agreement, predetermined agreement between me and that person in order for this to happen. So how is that a bad decision? How is that the wrong decision? It's not. The only thing that tells you it's right or wrong is your victim, is your self-esteem. So we got to change that. We got to change that. We got to make sure that you respond to it with strength. Because strength, as I said, doesn't come from right or wrong, good or bad. Strength doesn't come from if I'm successful and I make millions of dollars, or if I have no money. Success or strength doesn't come from if I'm well-liked or if I'm not accepted. It comes from the willingness to learn and grow. You must have the willingness to learn and grow and to choose you above all. They tell you, hey, be yourself, right? Choose you and be yourself. And life will take care of itself. Allow yourself to be free in the sense of that I'm going to go with the flow. And when predetermined choices come into my life, I'm going to respond in love and compassion and understanding. Once I recognize that, hey, I'm going to move on and I'm going to try to gain the knowledge that I gained from there. And then after that, I'm going to move on from that lesson, and that lesson will be, as you guys say, behind me. But you have, if you're going to choose, if you're going to respond, make sure that you respond with strength. Make sure that you respond with surety. Make sure that you transform your ideas into who you are, because that's what choice is all about, transforming your ideas to who you are. As long as you live in fear and you're dictated by right or wrong, good or bad, or what others think or feel, you will always have chaos and suffering. But if you choose you, you will find that life isn't so bad, and neither is our choices and the consequences that may follow. All right, everybody, that is tonight's show. Let me see if I can find my little notebook here full of all my good information that I always seem to forget. But I thank you guys so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. If you want to follow us on our Facebook, it's facebook.com/Transcendental Transformation Radio Show. You can follow us on our live stream at YouTube at youtube.com/Transcendental Transformation Radio Show. Follow me personally on my Facebook at facebook.com/The Life of Raina. Visit our website, soulandspiritguide.com, and sign up for the newsletter to receive special invites to special hidden shows that I do, to VIP access, and special gifts from the guests. And always email me, guys. I know it's the holidays. You guys are going to be busy, but tell me what's going on with your lives. Email me at thelifeofraina@icloud.com. Again, everyone, I want to thank you all for joining me. I hope that you guys have a wonderful and safe holiday. And don't drink and drive this holiday season. Make sure that everyone gets home and safe. And I hope to see you after my birthday. All right, everyone, have a... I forgot to almost say my saying. And remember to always believe in yourself, and it's not our abilities or our talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you, and have a wonderful night. All right, everybody, we are done as far as the audio on Blog Talk. And again, thank you guys so much for joining us for this show. I'm stuttering like crazy today for some reason. My brain must be a little tired, but thank you guys for listening and watching. And I will see you at the beginning of New Year's. Okay, bye.